Okay, I'll start the meeting, and then if those people come in, if I notice, I'll just let them in. Okay, so this meeting's recorded. Welcome to the November 9th Commission on Disability meeting. We are, Kate called out. She can't make it. Kelsey won't be here. Not sure about Jeff Bagg or Jeff Brown. Do you know, Jamie, if I guess
Jeff said that he was trying to log in, and then he had there was that issue with the login. So then I think he went off and did something else.
Okay, well, since been fixed. All right, so hopefully he's able to show up. We just need to quickly put in an approval or a not approval for the minutes for October and November. Did anybody find anything, those that were at the meeting, find anything wrong with the minutes?
So you sent me an email saying that there was something wrong with the minutes, but I didn't understand it.
Oh, it was just Sarah Chaplin isn't here anymore. Jeff Brown took over for Sarah Chaplin, so she's not going to be at any meeting. So she wasn't missing.
Oh, okay.
A transfer.
Yeah, she eventually fixed it.
On the website you are?
Gotcha. All right.
And there were some names and stuff that were not okay with the November one, but I already told Kelsey. So is there anything else anybody has to say about those minutes? No, I don't think anybody else can say anything. But we don't really have a quorum to vote on minutes, correct, Jamie?
How many people are actually actively on the committee right now?
7.
So yeah, we do not have a quorum.
Okay, so I guess we'll be waiting. Okay, so public speak. So Evan, are you just here to listen, or did you have something you want? Okay. And oh, never mind, that's Jeff. I was like, Megan. All right, so I guess we'll go on to our guest speaker, Sarah Mocha, who's the Director of Special Education for the Easthampton Public School System. So thank you for coming. And if you could just give us an overview about what you do, and that'd be awesome.
Sure. So thanks for having me. It's always nice to see you, Angelique, and to see everybody here. So I am the Director of Special Education Services for Easthampton Public Schools. I've been in this, I think this is my 7th or 8th year in this role. And I've had the pleasure of serving the students and families of Easthampton since 1997. So I feel really lucky to have been in this community for so long. So Angelique asked me to give a sort of a general overview of special education and what services are available for students with disabilities in the school system. So I thought I would start out with just talking a little bit about students who may have a disability, to which it doesn't rise to the level of needing a significant amount of support, or that they don't require needing a significant amount of support. So there are some sort of lower level options for students, which could be if they had a medical disability, it could be an individual health care plan, or it could be a Section 504 plan. Section 504 is a civil rights statute from the 70s that was enacted to make sure that people with disabilities or suspected disabilities were not discriminated against in the environment that received federal funds. So there's it's called Section 504 that provides protections in the form of accommodations. It can provide a little bit of service to students, but to be eligible for that option, a school district does have to evaluate the student, has to get permission from the parent to evaluate, and a team of people that know the student get together and talk about the disability, the evaluations, and what that student might need to access school like everyone else. So there's that Section 504 avenue. Each school district is also required to have what's called a district curriculum accommodation plan. We call it the DCAP. Each district writes one, and it gives teachers and educators and people that work in the school, ideas of how they can make the same way. So this, oh, was I fuzzy for a second? Sorry, yeah. So this district curriculum accommodation plan can be available for students with disabilities and students without disabilities. So each teacher has access to this plan and can put it into place to support students who might need just a little bit of a shift into how we traditionally deliver instruction. Things could be in that plan, things could be extra time on a test, making sure that they have access to certain types of technology with accessibility features. So there are different levels of how public school systems support students with disabilities. The one that I think people are probably most familiar with is special education. And our special education system is governed by federal and state laws. The federal law is called IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And then at the state level, it's just known by a Mass General Law number 6071 something. And so a public school's obligation really is to find all students in our city or our schools, in our city with, or town, if it were, that have disabilities. There's something in the federal and the state regulations called child find. So we have what's called the child find obligation to not only find students in our school system who may have a disability, but students who live in Easthampton. So things that I do to alert parents to that is 3 times a year, we send out a letter to all students or all families who have a child who's in the 2.5 to 3-year-old range to let them know about our public preschool and that we will offer a screening to all children right around the age of 3 to identify whether or not they may have needs. So that's one way that we fulfill our child find obligation. And one thing we know in this field is that the sooner we can address needs, the better, and the more successful students can be. So we send out that child find mailing 3 times a year. I also send it to all the preschools and daycares in Easthampton, pediatricians' offices in Easthampton, and then sort of the greater Easthampton area to let them know that we can evaluate students to determine if they have a disability, not only in that 2-3-year-old range, but all the way up. Another piece that school systems are required to do is partner with any private school within its city limits. So a couple times a year, I send a letter to Williston, letting them know that I have these federal dollars, which I'm required to spend on supporting students in private schools in Easthampton. And Williston's the only one that meets that qualification. I know we have some private daycares, but those don't meet the criteria for what I could spend these federal dollars on. Williston declines my offer for consultation each year, so I don't consult with them. But if there were a student that lived at Williston and their family wanted them to be evaluated, and we would be obligated to evaluate them and develop a plan, but they have yet to take me up on the offer for consultation. Before I dive into public school stuff, the process, if a student was a resident or child was a resident of Easthampton, but attended a private school outside of Easthampton, so Smith College Campus School, like, Pope Francis, which is a private high school in Springfield, any of the parochial schools, if that parent wanted that child to be evaluated, Easthampton is responsible for doing that as well. The parents can seek to go through the school system in which that private school is located, but most of the time it's the the district of residence that evaluates those students to determine if they have a disability and are eligible for special education. Does anybody, you have any questions, or do you want me to keep going?
I just had one quick question. So if the school is saying no, like how would the parents of Williston children know that you offer that if the school is saying no?
I don't know. Yeah.
Answer.
I don't, they have a learning center there. And someone runs that. So for students, there are options for students to get extra support, but they are, I don't know the answer to that. That's a good question. And in all my years, we've not evaluated anyone from Williston.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can continue unless there's somebody else.
So in a school system, and in order to comply with the federal and local, or state and local laws and regulations around special education services, there's a process. So if a parent or if a parent feels that their child may have a disability or is struggling in school, they can contact their child's teacher, they could contact the principal, they can really contact anyone and identify their concerns. And at that point, the school's district is obligated to evaluate that student. Massachusetts is one of only 2 or 3 states in the nation where a school district cannot turn down a parent request. In most of the other states, a school system is not obligated to comply with a parent request for evaluation. So in Massachusetts or in Easthampton, what we do is we ask the parents to fill out what we call a parent referral form, just so we can get a better understanding of what their concerns are and tailor the evaluation to that particular student. So there's one avenue that parents can make a referral, a pediatrician can make a referral, a therapist can make a referral. Certainly if someone other than the parent makes the referral, we contact the parent, talk about what their concerns are. So there's that avenue. And then in the school system, if a teacher or group of teachers has concerns about a student, they will bring that student to what we call our student support team. Each school is required to have a team of knowledgeable individuals that can review challenges that a student might be having and offer suggestions. It's really intended to see if there are regular education avenues that could meet the needs of the student before jumping right to an evaluation for special education. So sometimes that's the teacher may say, this student, I'm not seeing, it's been, 8 months, it's April. I'm not seeing the progress I would have expected to see in written language. I've consulted with, my colleagues. We've tried these different things and I'm just still not seeing the progress. They could make a referral to the student support team. Usually on that team is an administrator, a school psychologist, a counselor, and they will tailor that team to the needs of the student. That team comes up with some ideas. They try those ideas for 6 weeks. The team comes back together. And at that point, they may say, none of our ideas have worked. Let's make a referral for a special education evaluation. Or they could say, we have some other ideas. Let's do another 6 weeks of seeing if, we can support this student still through general education services. If that team moves towards a special education evaluation, here's the process. This would also be the process when a parent makes the referral. So within 5 school days of receiving the request for an evaluation, school districts are required to mail home or provide to the parent an evaluation consent form. On that form there's a letter that goes with it. The letter describes what the school system is proposing, and then the form outlines which evaluations we're seeking to get consent for. So often we are asking for an academic achievement evaluation, because really that's the function of being in school, is accessing academics. So we will do an academic achievement evaluation. There is a required evaluation for all students being evaluated called an education assessment. And that's something that the teacher does, the student's teacher. There's like 8 or 9 questions they answer about the child's communication skills, their participation, how they're accessing the curriculum. So that's the one required evaluation. And there's also a psychological evaluation, which really looks at the student's underlying learning profile and potential. Usually with that too, our school psychologists will do a little bit of an interview with the family, do an observation of the student, and also do some checklists to get an understanding of the student's social, emotional, and functioning, attention functioning. So usually a parent, or sometimes a parent, will complete those forms. Always the teacher completes those forms. It's a checklist. And a psychological evaluation can be far more comprehensive. Sometimes if we have concerns that a student is having some very significant mental health challenges, we may use a consulting psychologist to do that. We use James Levine and Associates. So if we're looking at trying to understand this child more clinically, we wouldn't have our school psychologist do that. We would ask someone else to do that. So speech and language is another evaluation that can happen. Occupational therapy, physical therapy, behavior assessments. There's a whole host of academically or educationally related evaluations that we can do. So this consent form goes out to the family. Once they sign it and return it to us, school districts have 30 school days to complete that evaluation. So all those evaluations must be completed within 30 school days, and then a meeting with a team of which the family is a part of comes together to review those evaluations, and that happens within 45 school days, so 15 beyond that 30. And then what that team does is make some decisions about what is next for that student. So there is what they call it's an eligibility flow chart, because the first step is to determine if this child or the student is eligible for special education services. So to do that, all the folks that completed the evaluations, the child's teacher, the child's family, and the team chairperson, and in Easthampton we have two people that lead our IEP teams. There's an elementary coordinator, and then there's a middle and high school coordinator. So to make a decision about eligibility for special education services, the first question is, does the student have a disability? Now, school systems don't diagnose disabilities, but the federal regulation, federal statute, and state laws give us 10 disability categories. There's a little bit more because some are clumped together, but an IEP team reviews the evaluations and makes a determination about whether or not the student meets the criteria for one of those disability categories. And those disability categories are defined at the federal level, and then a little more broadly at the state level. Massachusetts do things a little bit differently, and we tend to want to include more people. So the state disability definitions are more liberal than the federal disability definitions. So our rate of eligibility in Massachusetts is significantly higher than at the federal, or other states in the U.S. So the disability categories are specific learning disability, autism, developmental delay, intellectual impairment, emotional health. So if your child had ADHD, they could fall under the health disability category. There's a sensory category, which is for kids or students who have a visual impairment or hearing impairment. There's also a disability category called neurological. At the federal level, that's only intended for students who have a traumatic brain injury, but Massachusetts defines it very differently. So that sometimes is a catch-all disability category where if you can't quite figure out where the student fits, sometimes the team will use that neurological disability category. And you can find all of these definitions if you Googled IDEA or Massachusetts Special Education, regulations. So that's the first question that the team has to answer. Does the student have a disability? If they answer yes, they move to the next question. The next eligibility question is the student making effective progress? And that word effective is really key. But of course, no one provides a definition for what effective is. So it's up to the team to make that decision. But is the student making progress that's commensurate with their peers? Usually, if you're at that level, the answer is no, that they've been brought to this process because they're not making effective progress. So if that answer is no, they're not making effective progress, there's one more question, is does that child require specially designed instruction? That's the real crux of special education. It's that the child needs the instruction to be delivered in a different way or modified in such a way that they can access it. Some students, we might get to that question, and the answer is no, they don't need specially designed instruction. They may just need accommodations, or they may need, a healthcare plan or something. So that last question is really, a really important question. So if that answer is yes, then the student is eligible for special education services, and then the team writes or develops what's called an IEP, Individualized Education Program, and that plan outlines accommodations the student might need, specific goal areas. So if the student had a significant weakness in reading, a goal would be developed around reading that the team would expect that student to meet within a year. So they may have a reading goal. Also in that IEP are the services. The services are outlined that helps the student achieve that goal. So each goal has to be paired with a service. So a service might be daily reading instruction for 30 minutes by a special education teacher. It could be if they're having social emotional challenges, or if they're on the autism spectrum and require in-class supports. It might be that they have a paraeducator who is available to them. There's lots of different, and in the name, Individualized Education Program is just that each one is individualized. School systems have a continuum of services so that you're not recreating the wheel in terms of what services students can access, but you're individualizing goals, you're individualizing how much time, where that service might happen. So in that plan, It would also identify if they needed, speech and language therapy, if they needed to have a shorter day or shorter school day or school year, a longer day, a longer year, if we needed to modify transportation. It also outlines any testing accommodations that a student might need. So if they receive extended time or if someone reads them a test, we want to make sure that on the state required tests that they receive those accommodations as well. So there's a page that outlines any accommodations to our MCAS test. So once that IEP is fully developed, it goes out to a parent within 5 school days, but we always provide a summary to parents. So that summary allows us to take a little extra time, and we get that IEP out to parents in about 10 to 14 days, 10 days or so. Parents review it, and it cannot be implemented until the parent signs it. So the parents have the option of accepting it, rejecting portions, and then but once it's approved, the school system gets it back and we implement that IEP. Every year, the IEP team is required to meet. It's called an annual review to review the IEP. I talk about the student's progress, update any goals, make any changes to the IEP. And every 3 years, school systems are required to reevaluate every student. Our hope is that we can provide services that will allow the student to allow the student to have some accelerated progress. And then they, would be able to transition to more services that are provided through general education. But some students need an IEP for their entire school career. So that's perfectly acceptable, and we're happy to provide those services as well. Parents can make a request to reconvene an IEP team at any time. If they have concerns or usually it's concerns or questions, the team can come back together and make any changes or amend the IEP in any way to better support the student. I don't know. There are questions. Angelique, did I miss anything, do you think?
What happens if the parent doesn't agree with whatever it is you decided?
Perfect. So if a parent disagrees with what has been decided, we cannot implement anything without permission. They can, there are a couple of avenues they can take at the state level. If they reject an IEP or partially reject an IEP, they can request that the district enter into mediation with them. So the state provides a neutral mediator, and the parents and the district would get together and try to reconcile those differences. Then beyond that, the Massachusetts has what's called the Bureau of Special Education Appeals. If the parents were very dissatisfied with what the school was providing, or felt like their child's rights had been violated through the special education process, they can proceed to the Bureau of Special Education Appeals. And there's a hearing process where there's hearing officers. There's lots of, that's a much more formal process. Usually parents would have an attorney at that point. The district's represented by an attorney. I can say that in Easthampton, we've never gotten to that place. I think we are committed to doing what's needed to help our students make progress. And we're also really willing to, have informal conversations with parents about what their perspective is and how we can best meet the needs of their students. So we have certainly used the mediation process before, but in terms of that hearing process, it has not yet happened in my tenure here in Easthampton. But there are due process rights that parents have. And school systems provide that information to parents at least annually, what their rights are under special education services or under special education.
when I was in high school, I had a teacher refuse to abide by my IEP. Has that ever happened to you?
I mean, maybe, it's entirely possible. I think, one of the things that we do is, particularly as students get older, is make sure that they are aware of what is in their IEP and that they can advocate for themselves. A teacher could certainly that would not be acceptable, and we would work with that teacher to either understand what they're not doing or how to do it better. We would work with that student and their family, but they cannot refuse. It's a, legal document, and they are required to, the principal, ultimately it's the principal of the school that's required to make sure that IEP gets implemented properly. So I'm sorry that happened. That's, sounds terrible. I'm sorry.
I was always curious, like if there's a bunch of kids that need accommodations, like how a teacher would remember all of the accommodations for all of the children and implement all of them.
Yeah, I'm sure that that's really challenging as a teacher. That they will, so each, the special education teachers do consult with, the gen ed teachers. And what I would do is, if I were a fifth grade teacher and I had 3 or 4 kids with accommodations, I'd probably create a cheat sheet, or when you're doing your lesson planning, part of what you do when you're planning your lessons is to think about all the ways in which students are going to access that instruction. So hopefully they're thinking about all the learners in their classroom. But when I taught special education, so I never taught general education students. But when I used to teach, when I would develop my lesson plans, I always had like 1/4 of the paper and list the students that might need something different and sort of jot down the ways in which I was going to do that. So, and there are also paraeducators that are available that are floating, are available to teachers that might float between a couple of classrooms, and they might be the ones that are helping support students with accommodations as well.
I just wanted to welcome Jeff and Bryce and Bobby. Hi, guys. Do you have any questions?
I was an IEP when I was in school, so I liked it. It made me challenge myself every day to get better. Yeah. So we liked it. The one that you're talking to used to come in our classroom every day, so I know, high school and stuff.
Jeff, what was the last thing he said?
I know.
You know Sarah from high school?
I know Sarah from high school.
Yes, we're old friends. Hey, Bryce.
I'm at Riverside now.
Yeah.
And I'm doing good.
I'm so glad to hear that.
It's awesome.
Yeah. So I have another question. So you said you have to provide. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
It's okay. You can go first, but then I do have a question.
Okay. So you said you have to provide services for students that go to private schools, but students who go to private schools get their public school funding diverted to the private school. So you're providing services to them, even though like they're diverting your funding away from you.
So if a student attended, say, Smith College campus school, there's no public funding of that program. Yeah. So if they were school choice, then some money from Easthampton would say go to Northampton if they attended Northampton. But no, private schools don't receive any money from the city.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
ahead. Go
Can I?
ahead, Jeff.
Okay. So I think, Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong, but regarding Eli's question, I think the only way a private school would get any money from the city is if it was established that the public school could not provide needed services and the private school was the one that could. If it was like a specialized program for like severely disabled people, then maybe there could be some public funds involved, but otherwise, is that correct?
Yeah, so there are 175 approved special education schools in the state. And those schools are students that attend those schools are placed there by school districts. So if school districts don't have the ability to meet the needs of those students, school systems fund those placements. So yes, in that case, and then they provide all the services there. So, there's far fewer out here in Western Mass. Most of those 170 something are, from Worcester and beyond. But and Easthampton does, we're a small school system. I mean, we do have, I would say maybe 15 students who attend private approved special education schools, just because we don't have the program in-house, to meet their needs. So, but you're right, Jeff. Yeah.
My question for you was, because I've heard a million different explanations to this, just both in my own experiences and also just But what's the difference between an IEP and a 504 plan, and do both carry the force of law?
Both, yes, carry the force of law. What the real difference is that special education provides specially designed instruction, whereas a 504 is more around supports and services and accommodations. I think of it as a 504 sort of levels the playing field, which an IEP does as well, but a 504 does not have that specially designed instruction piece. It's a little complicated. It's quite complicated, and the difference is, but that to me is the main difference. But a 504 is absolutely, legally binding, and must be carried out by the district.
Sorry, got a barker over here. Does anybody else have any questions? I had like a quick one that Jeff Bagg, you might be able to answer this. Like when we were going through the survey results, somebody mentioned that the high school does not have a accessible door in the front of the building. So, but then a high school student told me there's another accessible door, Sarah, like on the side of the building. Like, how does that work with the accessible doors?
I'm not sure. I'm not aware of that. I don't know if Sarah knows offhand, but one of the things that I can't answer the question directly about the actual door at the high school, but part of what we've applied for with the MOD planning grant is to do that baseline assessment of all the city facilities to find out where there are deficiencies. And I think that would certainly come up in that type of project. And then, the idea is that once we identify problems like that door, then we're eligible to seek funding to correct it. But I don't know specifics of that. And I don't know, we can certainly get an answer if there is especially if there is a secondary access point. So Sarah, I don't know if you know anything about that.
I don't, but I'm trying to picture, right, when I walk up to the to the front door at the high school. I feel like there's a button on the, there's not. So,
So I went in there like 4 times last week to
Okay.
double check.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
Because I've been so involved in the building project with the new school, I know that they have to, adhere to the current standards, the ADA standards and, what everything else. So I don't know what was the process 7 or 8 years ago when the high school was built, but that's interesting to me.
Do you have children that are in like motorized devices and stuff currently, or?
At the high school, I don't think so. Not at the high school. Yes, in the district. But off the top of my head, I'm not sure about the high
Yeah.
school.
I mean, it's something that, Angelique, I wasn't aware of that from the survey. I think we can look into it. I mean, I think it goes beyond just whether there's a student who might
Right.
need that service, but anything that's open to the public, like an event at the high school,
Yeah.
That would certainly come up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's great. I wasn't aware of that. I don't know how to potentially resolve it, but yeah, knowing that kind of stuff is important. And I don't want to say anything simple, sounds simple, but a new mechanism on the door, going to be an investment for, but let's figure out how to look at that.
Okay. I don't have any more questions. Does anybody else have?
Angelique, after the new high school was built, I actually went there for my junior year and my senior year.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Sarah used to go to my meetings.
I did. Yep. We did see each other there.
That's good. I'm glad you're reconnecting.
Yep.
And if people have, specific questions, they can reach out to me. You can find my email address on the district website, or it's just, smochak, SMOCHAK @EPSD.us. Happy to answer any questions or help any families, in the city that might need help.
Thank you for coming.
You're welcome. Thanks for asking me. This is great. It's a little break in my day. So I appreciate it.
Good.
Thank you.
All right. We'll talk another time.
All right.
Bye
Bye
for now.
Bye. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Hi. Let's see. The next thing that I had on the agenda was recruitment. Jamie, are you there? Are you available for a minute? I think Jamie. So I sent everybody the so in going over the survey committee results, there's we're going to compile like sections, themes, and we're going to have to make some subcommittees. And we wanted to just one more time go over whether or not we should have more people so we could have active subcommittees, because right now it's me, Eli, and Kelsey on the subcommittees, and each of us have lives and can only do so much. So with that being said, we wanted to see if we could have new members. Jeff, I know there's always like the worry about whether or not we have a quorum, because the more members you get, like we have to make sure they can definitely come, otherwise we can't get things done. So I had sent out the little blurb where it said, I'm a little confused because it says that we can have up to 13, but when I talked to Barbara in the office, she said that we were capped out at 9. We don't have 9. We have 7 because Jamie and Jeff don't count as members.
I thought Barbara sent us the statute and it said the limit was 13.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, but I had emailed her months ago because the city keeps putting out like a little paper that says where they have the openings, and it doesn't say the COD has openings. So if we only have 7 members, then we have potentially 6 openings. So it keeps not saying that. So when I wrote to her, she said, oh no, you cap out at 9 and you have 9. And then I listed them out and said, Jeff and Jamie don't have. So,
Well, I think 2 things real quick. I think I am officially a member.
okay.
And so I think I just wanted to note that, but I think what the difference might be is that there's have up to 13, but the city has a charter, which is more specific. And I think that's probably what Barbara is pulling from, which may say we have 9.
So when I went back to ask her, like, could we just go over this one more time? That's when she forwarded me the piece,
that
the
legislation,
info
yeah, you
that
just
said up to 13. So.
Okay. Did you talk to Lindsay at all in this process to find out? Because
Originally I did. I haven't. I can do that today.
all right, and I'll take a quick peek now while we're kind of talking about it. Find out if the city charter says something different, because
Okay.
that may be where we get to the 9.
Okay. I do know that when we started the survey, there was somebody that reached out to me. That's kind of what started it. They reached out to me and said like, hey, do you have an opening? And I was like, I'll get back to you. And okay. So while you're looking, I did forward that to everybody just so they could see that little piece. Okay. Eli, did you want to do a quick like survey committee update? Just what you felt the themes were when we went over some of the stuff?
Sure. Well, yeah, like one of the most overwhelming themes was that like everybody wants the sidewalks and crosswalks to be better. Yeah, it was a big chunk of the people said something about that. I also, a few other things I thought were interesting. There were 7 people said that they were afraid of the police. And also there were several people who said that there need to be more public bathrooms, which is a need that I've seen before too. So yeah, I thought those were interesting.
Did you, other than the one that Angelique mentioned with the high school, were there any specific buildings, especially like city-owned buildings, that people had identified?
City-owned buildings, probably, but I don't remember right now.
That's fine. No, that's fine.
The Paragon Arts Building is not city-owned, correct?
Right.
Correct. That's up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, off the top of my head, I can't remember one other.
Oh, wait, I think the municipal building, yeah, I think the municipal building was mentioned.
Like 50 Payson Avenue, like the city hall. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we're still waiting to hear on that grant. We've talked about this a bunch of times, but I'm hopeful that we're going to get that grant, because that would be important to deal with the building.
Yeah.
And there are some basic site assessments in the downtown that we would be able to do as well as part of that grant. We're really hoping for that one.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, something that came out of that also, which maybe Jeff and Jamie, you can help me with, is I don't know if this would fall under city ordinance, but having it listed what the accommodation, like what kind of accommodations you have, if it's accessible for any city event. Would that have to be an ordinance to require people to put what's available on there?
It's unclear. Can you elaborate more on what you're
Like
thinking?
if you're putting out that there's a city council meeting, it would have to say like handicap accessible, like list out the accommodations, or if there's some more other events that the city's running, like I wanted it, like to be mandatory that you list whether or not it's, that came out of the survey. They said they don't know what events are accessible or not. And I know we've talked about that before.
Yeah, I don't know. Because you're not necessarily saying that events would have to be, or it wouldn't have to have provisions. It would be which accessibility provisions are being provided.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. I will be honest with you. I don't know how we would do that. We probably have to think that through a little bit. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Right. And I think there's like, even if they say it's accessible, they don't say like what that means. Like what, like, is it accessible to me, or is it, what that means?
I would want it to be, very specific. I will say that Lindsay Rothschild is asked to meet on a monthly basis with Kelsey and I to talk about various things. So I can put that information out if anybody else ends up wanting to join. I guess I could ask her.
I can include me on that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a good path, because the planning department will not be able to do certain things, and I think that one is, I would say that one's like higher level across the top, like from the mayor's office down. I think we talked about this with, I think it falls in the same kind of forms that are posted online in like a certain way, or the website. Those are things that we, like Jamie or I don't think we'd be able to initiate any of that. So I think going through Lindsay would be good to start.
Okay.
Oh, also, I should have said there were 69 responses in total.
Yeah. Which, Jeff, you said that was a relatively good, like when we had 50, you said that was pretty good. So
yeah, no, I think that's a good response rate for sure.
That's good. The only other question I had before we go was whether or not, since we have so many questions, like you just said, if we should have, I don't know what the requirements are. Is it to have like one city personnel person at every meeting, Jamie? Do you know anything about that? When I was reading the COD stuff about how many members, it said like one personnel person, or any of that sound familiar or not really?
I don't know what you're getting at. I'm sorry.
Okay. I emailed you the thing. So like later, if you read it and if you do have some clarifying information, just let me know. It was during the meeting I emailed, so don't be upset. Not trying to put you on the.
Okay, but what are you trying to figure out what the numbers?
Yeah, the requirements of the meeting. I sent it out to everybody earlier, but it was during the meeting that I sent it out. So I'm not upset that you didn't get a chance to read it.
No, I think it's pretty, there are a couple other committees that have like a set, there's a few members that have to meet certain qualifications. And so it says that majority shall consist of people with disabilities. One member shall be a member of the immediate family of a person with a disability. One member shall be an elected or appointed official. So I think that's why the city planner is on the commission.
That's what I was asking. Yeah.
I think the city planner is intended to be that I'm appointed. So I think it's appointed.
Can you have more than one city official?
I think you could have more than one.
Okay.
It's like that you have to have at least one.
Okay.
My understanding was that at least half of the members of the commission needed to have some sort of disability.
Yes.
And the other half did not, but I don't know where that is, if that's in that ordinance you just said.
It is.
That's what I was just reading from, yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I thought it was, you had to have some kind of connection to someone with a disability.
Okay. Right.
Right.
Yes,
like
because a majority of the members have to have, yes, that connection.
Okay. All right, so I don't have anything else that I think we need to cover. I know that minutes need to get fixed and I'll bring them up next meeting. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to talk about? The next meeting is December 7th. Well, thank you everybody for coming, and yeah, I appreciate you being here.
thank you, Angelique.
Thank
Bye
you.
for now.